Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for April 25th, 2016. We'll begin with the special order calendar decision items. Item number 1, 253, 89BZ, 405, 411 East 73rd Street, Manhattan.
Okay, this one, there were drawings submitted that clarified the height waiver for the mechanical equipment on the roof, very specific about the setbacks and how high each piece is, and also clarified the history of the installation, so there were really only 2 pieces that were installed subsequent to the text change. So other than that, I didn't have any issues.
Item number 2, 20108BZ, 4038 216th Street, Queens.
They requested a deferred decision to the end of May.
Item number 3, 227-10BZ, 204-12 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
They showed the masonry enclosure around the trash and the waste oil tank, which is what we asked them to do, but I can tell from the notes that it would just be a concrete block. So I really do think that the enclosure needs to be finished either in stucco or be a brick enclosure, so it's not an eyesore on its own. And it needs to be clear that it's higher than the receptacles that it's enclosing, the trash and the oil tank. So if we could just get the drawing modified to say that and submit it in the morning, by tomorrow morning, that would be fine.
By close of business date.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
Better. Okay.
Okay. Continued hearing items. Item number 4, 47237BZ, 2765 Cropsey Avenue, Brooklyn.
They requested an adjournment.
Item number 5, 63654BZ, 9612 Seaview Avenue, Brooklyn.
They submitted a landscaping plan for approval prior to their installation. I mean, not a formal BSA approval, but just to say that we agree with the location of the planting, and then they'll install. I thought that looked good to me, that they should install and come back with photos of the installation. They should also respond to the questions we had from the prior hearing, and the signage calculations on the plan should show that they comply with the C1 regs. Anybody else?
It just wasn't clear to me what the screening regulations say that they should be, that the landscaping should be densely planted. So I didn't know what the spacing was, but it didn't really look that dense to me.
So it should be tighter spacing, or it has to do with how the shrub grows, right? You have to plant 4 feet on center or whatever it is, or 6 feet on center, because ultimately the shrub will be wider. So it kind of depends on what it is. So they could speak to that.
Item number 6, 52864BZ, 24002 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
They requested an adjournment.
Item number 7, 52676BZ, 1492 Victory Boulevard, Staten Island.
Okay, they submitted elevations showing the signs, but without heights and measurements and calculations to show the totals. I'd really like them to be clear about it. They sort of act like that one side doesn't really have a sign.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah, but there it is. It says something. So they should draw a box around it, measure it, and tell us what the dimensions are. And again, do that immediately, ideally today.
Item number 8, 12997BZ, 15065 Cross Island Parkway, Queens.
They request an adjournment.
Item number 9, 4-98BZ, 12704 Guy Brewer Boulevard, Queens.
Also requested an adjournment.
Sorry, just texting Rory. New cases, item number 10, 32788BZ, 13628 39th Avenue, Queens.
Okay, Department of Buildings approved the Alt-1 connected with the C of O from March of 2016. The Building Information Systems, DOB, lists open items required to obtain the permit, and many were just submitted, so I'd like to know what the status of all of this is. But it does look like progress is being made in spite of these really, really long delays. I'd like to see signage drawing to show compliance with the C43 regulations. The public assembly application was approved in June of 2015, so I don't understand what's taking so long about pulling a permit for it, unless it's a no-work application. I just didn't understand what the slowdown is on that. Anybody else?
Well, that's about covered it for me. I wanted to know what was really taking so long and where they stood with their open items. There really shouldn't be some of those open items. They were very easy to handle and should have been done much quicker. So, wondering what's going on.
And they're asking for 3 additional years, which I don't it's a long time. And I wanted to know if they're using currently the mezzanine, because they were supposed to install a secondary means of egress, a stairway, which I guess since they don't have the permit, they haven't. So they really shouldn't be using the mezzanine.
It is being used.
Probably, yes. It was being used, the mezzanine is being used.
Yeah.
So we had concerns about this the last time. I don't think they ever updated their CO from the 1940s or something.
No.
So,
Right, so they have an alt-1 for obtaining a C of O out, but they haven't been approved. Right.
and I think the last time we saw this, they had given us some interior photos, and we were concerned about, not that we're approving the layout of the tables, but it looked like the layout of the table and the interior furniture would cause obstructions to egress. So if they could give us interior photos.
Yeah, and I think probably some of the work that they have to do could have been done under Alt 2. They didn't have to file it all under the Alt 1. So I think they need to speed up the process.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Appeals calendar, decision items, item number 11, 300-08A, 3935 27th Street, Queens.
Okay, so we had closed this and we've made some really good progress, and we have good reports from the neighbors that the remedial work is done, has been done or is being done to high standards, and they're in favor of this moving on, but we're just waiting for the best squad to sign off on all of the protection. They submitted photographs showing the hoist and the protection and so on. It's really night and day from how we started, so I'm pleased. Anybody else?
Zoning calendar, continued hearing items, item number 12, 32213BZ, 4201 Main Street, Queens.
Okay. So as of today, there is still a stop work order, a partial vacate, violations for failure to certify correction of Class 1 violation, 15 open ECB violations and 9 open DOB violations, and many ECB fines still owing. I'm trying to understand, is there a plan? Like, what's going on? This is our 6th hearing since exactly 1 year ago with snail's pace progress. I'm kind of getting to the verge of how do you make them do something except just deny the application? So I would say in order to sort of make any progress at all other than for me to recommend denial, the owner has to come to the hearing and we have to understand what the plan is to actually do what needs to be done. They provided photos of the areas with enclosures for recycling and the repainted walls. We had asked previously for photos of the other areas on the interior of the site to see if other areas had been addressed, and they didn't provide that. And they seem to be like, for every hearing, which happens months away from the previous one, they show one little thing, to show one little bit of movement. And I just feel like they're stalling, and it's useful for them to stall because they can continue to operate illegally. They show they didn't do what we asked them to do in terms of the landscaping along the residential perimeters, and instead they showed like potted plants.
They're working on it.
Right, they said they were going to tear up the ground to
Okay.
create a
Right.
planting bed. But
So they are,
But they should have done it already, first of all, and second of all, on the drawings, it only shows one area being planted, 2 other areas, they show this sort of little I don't know, like a gesture to something green, but there's no room, there's not an adequate curb for anything. They really need to provide the screening for real and show it for real and how many plants are going to be and what type they're going to be, all of that, if they're taking this seriously, right? And I'm at the stage where if they don't take it seriously, then we don't either. And we need to see it installed, but first we need to see the drawings to see how many shrubs, that it's dense shrubbery, that it's all along the perimeter and not just at parts. They also, they showed plans, they had signage calculations, but they need to show what the regulations are and how they comply. And then they show 69 parking spaces on site. But they don't show us where the off-site parking area is for the other 18 spaces and the deed restriction that goes with them. So as far as I'm concerned, they've made no progress. What's going on with that? And so this is my recommendation. I'd suggest we give them 2 months to do everything. Deed restriction, planting, everything. Otherwise, and after that, I'll bring this to a vote. And they'll have to live with the consequences. And one of the reasons they needed these parking spaces is because they illegally expanded the restaurant, right? Any other comments about this?
I agree with you.
Item number 13, 2414BZ, 106202 Sutter Avenue, Queens.
They did look at the mechanical deduction that reduced the floor area waiver slightly. And, in looking at kind of the scope of this, it's such a minor increase. I'm okay with this even if it's...
I still think they can legalize it without, they have, on the second floor, they have an area which is between 5 and 8 feet, and it's directly under a sloping roof, and I believe they're eligible for a bonus, which would take care of the FAR waiver, but they don't really discuss it.
So you're saying the second floor is really an attic? Instead of calling the second floor, it's really the attic?
Well, I believe it has to be under a sloping roof.
Right.
And it is directly under a sloping
true.
roof.
Right.
The slope has to be a certain degree. It has to be between 5 and 8 feet in height. And there's like 2 feet 11 inches on the second floor on either side that I believe could be eligible for a, bonus floor area.
Okay.
So
So we could eliminate that if they would just...
that's what I'm
take a look.
hoping, but
Yeah.
she didn't really
No, it wasn't
discuss that.
mentioned at all.
So it's 23142A.
142A.
Cleanup work that they have to do regarding their plans. They have to be consistent. If they're using feet and decimals on their plot plan, they should carry through feet and decimals straight through on every plan page, which they don't do. And also their plot plan side yard calculations don't add up to 30. It's off by 1/100th of a point, but still they should go through everything with the calculator in hand. They also need to look at their statement because even though they have corrected some of their square footages to reflect the 1,941.94 square feet originally and then deducting the mechanical space, then in the very next paragraph on page 2, they go back to the 1,927 square feet instead of the 1,930 that was corrected. So they should just use a calculator, go through paragraph after paragraph, page after page, kind of get it all reconciled.
So those were the exact same comments from last time. They made corrections, but they didn't
only
follow it through.
Exactly.
Yeah, wow. Okay. One of the things about the mistakes on drawings, that they don't add up to 30 feet, is because the computer provides
rounding, right?
useless dimensions, where it tells you what the dimension is, and then nobody bothers to check that the total equals, right? Humans didn't used to make those kind of errors. The computers make them all the time. Okay, anybody else on this? Okay.
Item number 14, 200-14BZ, 4605 Parsons Boulevard, Queens.
Okay, they submitted some revisions to drawings to clarify some things. Tomorrow they're going to come in with the architect and a representative from the mosque to actually respond to our questions, specifically anything that's kind of still open. My only note from what was submitted is that there can't just be grass as the landscaping adjacent to the property. We've seen from other houses of worship in residence districts that there really needs to be shrubbery that functions as a buffer to prevent like kids from running in the side yard and interfering with kind of residential neighbors. So the landscaping needs to be dense shrubbery around the site perimeter to act as a sound buffer and prevent congregating in the side areas. There should also be a wrought iron fence that like limits the property to make it clear that you can't go past that point. And to the extent possible, this is a little different. There should be shrubbery provided along the front areas shown now as grass, though that might not be preferred in terms of how the congregation enters the doors, so they should speak to that. Anybody else?
I have a
Sorry, go ahead.
I have a problem with the A finding in terms of the size of the site and the 5 square feet per person. I do feel, we had recently, a mosque in Staten Island where we used 11 square feet per person. And so my thinking is that this site is too small and does not meet their programmatic needs. Also, the statement still says that all congregants will attend all meetings. In the statement, it still says that.
Oh, which is not.
And so,
It does? I thought it just says for Friday night and.
well, maybe it was
Ramadan, right?
And Ramadan.
contradictory in different places.
Yeah.
I'll look for it, but
Okay.
I read that it still, everyone was going to attend all the meetings. And
Which is
so
logical.
I think they should do
Yeah.
an evening parking availability study because it could be significantly different from during the day.
Okay, but so it's obvious that during the day, people wouldn't be there en masse because they're working, they're away, right? And in the evening, people living 3/4 of a mile away, walking is part of the tradition. And I saw there was another case like this where the board viewed the 3/4 mile walk as part of the process of going to pray. So, and it seemed to be persuasive that you don't need to do a parking study for 420 people. So we should consider that. And then the other thing is the architect, so as we know from experience with different departments of buildings, the architect has obviously designed other mosques and said that the buildings department wouldn't accept a number less than 5 or greater than 5 square feet per person because it's standing. So, what do? He's supposed to be showing the rated occupancy, right? So whether they actually have that many people, that's the rated occupancy that he has to show for buildings.
Well, they're saying that that's the size of their congregation, the
Yeah.
420. So they're designing for 420, and I don't believe the size of the mosque is adequate for that many people.
So I guess maybe the question is, are all 420 attending at one time? Because the prayer is happening at different periods, and of the 420, there might be a critical mass that's coming Friday at 12, and then during Ramadan, but maybe not all 420. So I think that's a clarification that would be helpful.
Maybe a breakdown by service of
Yeah.
how many people.
And I thought that was kind of stated in the document, which said that the Friday afternoon prayer is the heaviest used, and then the Ramadan after the break in the evening, that's the heaviest used. And the number was provided. I don't have the information, but I thought that's what. But it would be helpful to get more clarity on that.
Do you want to add something?
I think I just want a little bit, it's a more of a cleaning up of the additional documents that were provided. The waiver diagram that was submitted doesn't correspond, this elevation doesn't correspond to the plan, so it just needs to be consistent. And also the stair circulation that is shown in the plan doesn't quite match with the section, so it's just cleaning up those elements. And I personally, I think if the stair is moved a little bit, there might be a little bit room for people to also hang out in within the lobby area. But I think, I realize there is a constraint somewhere, but if it can be improved a little bit, that would be helpful, because as you said, the frontage on Parsons, there is not much, so you want to make sure you can contain as much of the congregants within the property line, and if that can be maneuvered a little bit, that would be helpful.
Well, they made a design decision, I guess, based on community board comment, I'm not really sure where it came from, to pull back from the property line. So instead of having a larger facility with more lobby area, they opted for a more sidewalk area. So that's unusual. Most of the time, we don't see
Right.
that, right? So,
But in this case, the staircase, it's not against the other 46th Avenue. If it pulled up all the way against 46th Avenue, maybe that tight triangular corner that comes down to the entrance and to the elevator, maybe that can be widened a little bit and may allow for a little bit more congregation space that within the enclosed wall.
okay.
I had a comment about the character section, because they talk about how all of the neighboring churches and schools are taller than the mosque, and they list the heights of 35, 38.6, and 43 feet in height, and really only the Mary's Nativity Church is actually taller. The other buildings are all smaller than this building, including the dome. So I think they need to address that and correct that same, because with the dome, this building's 45 feet 10 inches.
But do those include like the steeples and the?
Well, the only one with the steeple is the big St. Mary's Nativity Church. So the other buildings seem to be smaller. So they should just either take that statement out or just, correct which buildings they're using to judge the height of this building. Also, they should reconcile their statement with the EAS and with the plans regarding the street wall height and the total height.
Yes.
Because in some places it's 33, some places 33.9, some places 45 feet, some places 45 feet 10 inches. So they need to reconcile all of that. And I had a question about the conforming plans, because they make the statement that the cellar on the conforming plans is only large enough for one bathroom and one ablution room and no administrative space, but the cellar can actually take up the entire lot because it's below ground, so I think that's an inaccurate argument.
I just want to point out that in the statement, the revised statement on page 5, at the bottom of page 5, it says there's 420 worshipers, and they go through a list of all the prayer services, and then on the top of page 6, it says the entire congregation attends all of these prayers.
No, that's incorrect.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. That's what I'm going on. That's
Because
what
they
they're
told us
saying.
different things at
Right.
Right,
the in other places.
yes.
Okay. Anybody else think about it? No, okay. Move on.
Item number 15, 26914BZ, 8944 Metropolitan Avenue, Queens.
Okay, they clarified this is a legalization. They went carefully through, I thought that was very helpful, the parking requirements and the history of the building, and that essentially all the parking is waived because of grandfathering or it doesn't hit the number. But they are providing 15 spaces, even though they're not required. They provided a parking circulation plan, but it doesn't look to me, and I'd like the drivers or the parkers in the group to talk to this. It didn't look to me that you can have a vehicle both enter and exit at the same time, since the width of the drive is only 14 feet. Sort of the drive-by lane is only 14 feet. They did file for a fire alarm in October of 2015, and it's still not approved, so I didn't really understand why not, unless they filed with the assumption again that they filed under it being already approved for PCE. And also, there's no sprinklers. I'd like the fire department to take a look at whether sprinklers are necessary in this case, because it's not your standard, it's not a gym. So, anybody else?
No, I just had questions about the fire safety and whether or not maybe the fire department can take a look and we can understand why they haven't been able to get their fire alarm application signed off. Seems like they should have been.
I think on that circulation plan, they should put the cars on the plan so you can see whether or not the
Yeah.
cars actually maneuver. I think it'll be tight, but I think it's probably could be done. It's just tight maneuvering. But I had a question on I'm trying to figure out, on the corner of the lot that has the 2 parking spaces that are kind of like tandem parking spaces on the driveway, kind of. There is a small space, and then the cars in the back that are all kind of like perpendicular to the rear lot line. The one on the far right, that's kind of a space away from the tandem spaces, I had a question about that maneuverability, because I think it's like 20 or less than 20 feet wide. So it seems to me that if there's a car in one of those tandem parking spaces that's on that driveway area, it would be hard to access those rear spaces that are behind it. So it would be great if they could put the car in there too and show that maneuverability.
Okay.
Item number 16, 32914DZ, 1316 Avenue West, Brooklyn.
Okay, they provided more information on the impact of the proposal on 1922 East 14th Street, which is perpendicular to the site. That house is 2-story plus an attic and backs up to about 1/2 of the width of the subject lot, and will be about 31 feet from the rear wall of the addition, so I didn't think it would be especially impacted by the proposal. My bigger concern is the impact on the adjacent properties on either side of the subject, that both have complying rear yards, except in one case, they have a 1-story extension. However, the subject house is very small, so I actually don't see much leeway if the idea is to add a master bedroom. The proposed rear yard is the odd dimension, probably computer generated, of 22 foot 7.5 inches. Real life projects don't get built to those kinds of dimensions, so please use whole numbers. The drawing should state that it's a 23 foot rear yard and hold to that, although 24 feet would have been better. At the last hearing, the applicant stated that the architect would endeavor to increase the depth there, but it didn't do it. Anybody else?
I just still had questions about the garage in the front. I don't know why they couldn't do the application for the garage under a separate application and just not show it on our plans, because I'm not sure if it complies with curb cut regulations, or, it doesn't comply with the open area,
Right.
but they point to other neighbors having garages.
Right.
So, as far as I'm concerned, we can't approve it, and it's more than just
Putting in
the open area. It could also be curb cut and other things.
Well, what if they put a note on it that clarifies all the issues that DOB has to look at? Open area, curb cut, anything else? Landscaping?
I don't know. Yeah, landscaping, right.
Okay, so,
I guess it complies with the zoning regulations regarding the slope. I don't know if we asked them about the height at
did
the
ask them
entrance.
about
We
the
did,
height,
okay.
landscaping, height, curb cut. Well, we don't have to decide about the slope, let DOB do that.
DOB will do it,
Right?
Yes.
yeah.
So, and that to be determined by DOB?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Because if they don't show it on the drawings, then DOB won't allow it because it wasn't shown on our drawings. So then they'll be back and forth.
And they couldn't make a separate application.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
could make a.
They could make a separate application to...
Only if it's a separate
for the garage. It's not, it wouldn't change their floor area.
But the
right?
application would, what, an all-two for it? To show it as a room, not a separate application in the sense of like another building, because it's
Right.
not another building.
Right.
So you should make that
Right.
clear.
But how can they make a separate application, not to us, obviously, to DOB?
Just to DOB,
Yeah.
right?
The DOB, if it doesn't see a garage on our drawings, will send it back.
Yeah, because it's a subject of a grant, so it
Right.
would have to come back here.
Okay.
New cases, item number 1, 15214 BZ, 673 Briggs Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay, so, okay, in general, with respect to the uniqueness finding chart, there's something not right about the shadings that indicate whether the other properties are built close to or exceeding the allowable FAR. I actually didn't understand what the shading was for. I was a little There are areas that aren't shaded, there are ones that are, they look the same to me, I don't know. The vacant lots should also be shaded and indicate whether in common ownership, so you should be able to understand which is vacant. The uniqueness chart was useless, more or less. With respect to the hardship, what they call the hardship costs, I actually didn't understand what the $90,000 is for. All vacant sites need foundations and underpinning. I didn't understand, many of them have existing foundations that you dig up. I didn't understand why that's an additional cost. With respect to the statement of facts, it's internally inconsistent with respect to the allowable height. This is a request to waive the maximum base height of 40 feet. The waiver request also doesn't include lot coverage, which I think it needs to, although both the first and second floors exceed the 1326 square foot coverage maximum. So I didn't understand why it didn't include that. Noting that the waiver of up to 23 feet and 1 story is only for a ZR school definition, or if not within 100 feet of a wide street, and I actually don't know whether Driggs or Fillmore are considered a wide street. I didn't think they would be, so. With respect to the classroom sizes shown, I'd like to see more information on the age group in each room, since the ratios of teacher to student and the maximum group size varies. For instance, does the room sizes that they showed, those include the kitchenettes? And also there's sort of like these little alcove areas around the kitchen, does it include that? I mean, it wasn't clear that the areas that are included should be shown on the plans. There should be some sort of a shading or an outline that indicates what's the area of the rooms. With respect to the 30 square foot per child calculation, the rooms are much larger than that, but they also never explain to us what the allowance has to be for the teachers, and they say they have 2 teachers, a principal teacher and then a student teacher, so how much room do you have to add to that for the teachers? Because I got that if you did the subdivision by 30 square feet, you'd get 97 students. So that's a lot more students than they're saying they need. There's also some stray drawing, there's some rectangles shown in classroom 3, I don't know what those are, those should be taken out. I'd like to know why the cellar plans are different in the as-of-right from the proposed, and why the central stair is in a different location in the as-of-right, and why isn't full lot coverage used on the first floor in the as-of-right? It's like a different project that they're proposing. I didn't really understand, like outdoor space is proposed on the as-of-right on the ground floor and not on the proposed. If the stair, it seemed to me that if the stair were pulled closer to the side lot line perpendicular to Fillmore, as in the proposed, the classroom at the corner would be larger to accommodate more children in the as-of-right. Also, if they could describe the office function and show who sits at each chair in the offices, because they were specific about who the staff is, but not why they need all those desks and offices all over the place. I didn't understand why you need both, for example, a janitor and a custodian, or I don't really know what the difference is, frankly. And why they would need a full-time accountant for such a small operation. Normally you have a bookkeeper and then the accountant comes in a couple of days a month, that kind of thing. The programmatic needs statement needs to be coordinated with the statement of facts. They don't say the same things. Let's see, I'd like to understand the issue about the use of the open play area on the roof of the 3rd floor, because it's actually on the roof of the 2nd floor. So, it's a roof of the 1st floor, access from the 2nd floor, so I don't understand about the 3rd floor. We actually, in the fire department, was not okay with the actual roof being used because of the way that I think that this parapet wall wraps around. There's no access for the fire department through it, so there needs to be access. So they need to work with the fire department on that. Trying to understand what the purpose of the multi-purpose room on the roof is, and whether it's been included in the floor area calculations.
Which is very high for the roof.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that.
Whether,
I think there's something like over 1,000 square feet on the roof for floor area.
right.
But the multi-purpose room was much smaller than that. It's only like 166 square feet. So I was wondering, what else are they
What are they
counting as
counting?
floor area?
Right. And also, I didn't understand why the mechanical equipment can't be located on the roof instead of on a raised platform over the play area, which makes the structure feel so much higher. Because this multi-purpose room, it seems like that thing that place in the front that they call the multi-purpose room, that could be the area where you put the mechanical equipment. I just don't understand what that thing is for. And then I think they are, but are they using a machine roomless elevator? And why is the boiler room on the roof and not in the cellar? There are a lot of things like that that seem to be making the structure bigger than it needed to be. They should show the location of the required fence on the as-of-right drawings. Also, I don't actually think they need a waiver for the fence height, because zoning resolution 24-51, paragraph T says that a wire, chain link, or other transparent fences are permitted height obstructions. So, and the statement of facts probably incorrectly describes the fence as plexiglass, but the renderings show it made out of different kind of wire, and I think below the parapet level, it's some kind of opaque material like wood. So they need to explain better what that is. I'm looking at in terms of how the egress works. Didn't think the egress meets code.
I don't think it does either.
You're egressing through a room to get to the outside. That's not allowed. And the stair around the elevator isn't enclosed.
Right.
That's also not
That's a
allowed.
no-no.
So the 2 fire stairs, neither of them seem to be legitimate egress. And if you, granted, I don't think you have 75 people on any one floor, so maybe you can have one means of egress, but you can't go through a room to get to it. So I totally didn't understand that. And I also know because of that winder stair around the elevator and other approaches, that the circulation is taking up an enormous amount of area in this design. It could be used for classroom use if it were more efficiently laid out. I'd like to know if the Bureau of Child Care Services has reviewed the plans, which is something we always ask for these. And they had a DOH review in June of 2013. Has there been an update to that? And also, I'd like to know whether they're proposing to participate in the UPK program. And then one other comment. I'd like to know why the per square foot construction costs for the as-of-right at $554 are higher than the proposed at $485, especially since the proposed has an extra stop for the elevator and the stairs. However, those costs don't match the costs shown in the financials. that were prepared by the cost estimator, and which are more logical in a certain way. The proposed is $581, and the as of right is $535. So you would say, okay, the square footage cost might be a little more in the proposed because there's an extra stop in the elevator and an extra stair, but I don't really see why that would affect the square footage. I don't get why you have more square footage. I don't really see why it would cost more per square foot. And then we have a lot of comments on the EAS, which I guess I won't go through in detail, but we do have a lot of comments on the EAS.
I found that the as-of-right plan was not very credible. It wastes a lot of space. Actually, I think there's a lot of wastage of space in general in both the as-of-right and their proposal. I had concerns about the wrap-around stair and, sort of that elevator core. It takes up a lot of room, and it seems that their circulation really takes up too much space, and they could possibly derive more classroom space and probably get rid of some of the classroom space that they say that they need to make it a bigger building. I'd like them to do, sort of an egress study to make sure that their egress is correct. I didn't understand why the kitchenette units were so large. Not only in their proposal, but in the as-of-right, they've got a couple that are, like larger than my kitchen at home. So wondering why it needs to be that large. Is that, some sort of programmatic need that they have, that they're going to teach kids how to cook? I don't know, but it was not clearly evident to me. I did have concerns about the outdoor play area on that second floor level and the discussion of whether or not there's going to be impact on the residential. And I would assume that maybe people can be looking down onto it. So if that's the case, then how are they going to protect both the folks in the residential from noise, and then also how are they protecting kids from anything that gets thrown out of a window or whatever. Also, there seems to be a discrepancy in the amount of net square footage that they are claiming that they can derive. As of right, they net something like 3,316 square feet. But then they go to the development section and they talk about 3,296 square feet. So that confused me. I wasn't really sure how they got that. So in general, I just felt that the design could warrant another look-see and to start to make things a little more closer together and not be so generous with space that isn't going to be used. They can have a much smaller building if they start to look at
Unless there's a programmatic need for more
Exactly.
public areas. We've seen that in some schools where they want to have large areas
But then
between
they
the
should
schools.
identify that and
Right.
say, this is what it's for. It's for congregating students and they can, do whatever. But it just appears that, it's just kind of circulation and there's really sort of no reason for that.
I think their programmatic needs statement could be more in line with their statement of facts and findings, because they talk about how the school is going to be for 77 students, yet they spend a lot of time in the character finding talking about the 2 sessions that they're going to have that I'm sure are going to be for 154 students instead, because they have a morning session that's separated by a couple of hours from the afternoon session. So it's not likely that those kids are going home and coming back, and that's not addressed at all. So if it's for 154 students, then that's a larger impact on the neighborhood, so that really has to be discussed. Not that it can't happen, it's just that then they really need to talk about the effect of all of those students and the comings and goings of them, especially during the midday, and the effect it has on that neighborhood.
Anything else in terms of the financials? No?
Not at this time.
Okay. Okay.
I had a question regarding the programmatic needs analysis and whether they were eligible for deference. Because I can recall for-profit daycare facilities that we did not allow deference.
Right.
for a variance. So I think they should give us some precedent in terms of BSA cases or case law. And especially because they submit a letter from an attorney saying that they don't fall under the DOE.
Right.
And if they don't have a UPK, it's basically a for-profit daycare. So I'm not sure if they're eligible for deference as a school.
Well, so it seems like we don't even need to really go to the deference, because if they did a better job on explaining the sites, it is a small, odd
It is,
site.
yes.
So it seems like we could completely rely on the site configuration and not even have to talk about deference. I think the harder one is the B finding, where because they're not a not-for-profit, we have to look at the financial viability of the project. Right? Yeah.
So, well,
Go ahead.
no, sorry.
Okay. Unless we have some precedent that indicates, which I think would be more like case law precedent, because our statute says, except for not-for-profits, everyone else has to show the B finding financials, right? So, right?
I had questions on the B finding. I didn't really understand it completely in terms of a school running a profit and then they're paying rent to somebody. I almost thought of the school as being the developer and they were getting a certain income to offset the costs of development, and then they're also on top of that showing a rent. So I didn't quite understand that analysis.
I think the basis of the financials is probably not accurate. I think that if we're talking about real estate here, we have to talk solely about income to the real estate. And what this financial report is discussing is income to the business and making a business argument on how more students equals more income, which is feasible. And we're not supposed to be judging the business. We're supposed to be talking about the property. And so really what we should be discussing is the income to the real estate, how much a community facility of this size costs to build, how much it will get in terms of lease income versus a proposal, not whether a school of, 77 students at $20,000 a year is a better business deal than a school of 30 students at $20,000 a year. And in fact, when we have hotels, the hotel analysis, because a hotel is a business as well as real estate, is often taking out business income and business expenses so that what's left is real estate income, and then the real estate income and expenses is actually what's analyzed to talk about feasibility in terms of property value. So that's why I think that this financial study needs to be redone. It needs to focus in on the real estate. So what we have is uniqueness, the uniqueness finding based on the real estate, and then talk about the income and expenses based on the real estate.
So with a hotel, the rack rates and the ballroom rentals and all that, that's just going to inform how much someone would pay for the site to build a hotel? Is that?
No, that talks about the hotel business, and
Right.
usually when you look at the hotel profit and loss statement, it talks about all of the business, the total income, rack rate, I
Right.
guess the occupancy rate, and then the income from the food and the beverage and the phone and everything. And then you'll see the expenses to that business.
Right.
The expenses to run the catering and the expenses to run the business. Then you'll see what's left is income attributed to real estate, to which you'll then deduct general real estate expenses from, to drill down to a final net operating income. Otherwise, you're going to overvalue the real estate because you're really imbuing all of that business value into it.
Okay.
I think most of my, sorry, go ahead.
But I'm just asking, do they need to go to LPC? Are they in a?
They already were
They
approved by
already got approval?
LPC,
Okay.
so,
And that's fine.
unfortunately, they were at LPC kind of a long time ago. If
With the same project?
Same project. And from LPC's perspective, in terms of neighborhood character, the LPC found that it was the right height, right? With that,
With all the mechanicals and everything?
well, I don't know that LPC saw all the mechanicals. If you look at the drawing that was approved by LPC, the rendering, it doesn't show the mechanicals. It shows that high fence system.
It sort of caps off there. It doesn't show
Yeah, you don't
anything.
see that there's more in height.
Yeah.
LPC does look at mechanicals. I just don't know if they saw
Because
that.
that's why I questioned whether or not LPC had approved what we're looking at.
Right. Yeah, so obviously though, if we were to say that they don't need as much height, for example, they'd have to go back to LPC.
I'm sorry, go
Go ahead.
I think most of my concerns have been picked up. I just wanted a little bit more clarity from the EAS. At least it seems there would be 2 phases, 2 sessions, totaling, all total, there'll be 77 students. But I think it would be helpful if a breakdown can be provided per session, students, teachers, teacher's aide, and the hours of operations for each one of these sessions. And same thing with the as of right. It just was like between the programmatic need, the environmental, and the statement, I was getting 3 different reads. So it would be helpful to get that clarity, and if it's broken up by each session. And that also will
And by
help us
classroom.
understand the classroom needs, the capacity of all of those per session. Because right now, the statement of fact states it as total of 77 students, and that's the classroom, but the EAS kind of says 77 students broken up between 2 sessions. So.
Right. But according to that, then there'd be, like you said, 154
Right.
students times 20,000.
Exactly, right. So.
Right, that's
way
what
more lucrative.
it would be 154, because if you look at the room occupancy, it talks about how they want 12 2-year-olds, 15 3-year-olds, 18 4-year-olds, 18 5-year-olds, and the 14 mixed use. That equals up to 77, and there are 5 classrooms. That corresponds to each
Right,
one of
right.
these
Yes,
groups.
exactly.
So if you're having a morning and an afternoon session, like
I
I
agree
said
with you.
before, that's 154 students.
I agree with you. It's just that all of those 3 documents are kind of
Take time.
projecting 3 different
Oh,
things. So I think-
definitely, they also
don't
have
So
to
we
be
need it-
reconciled.
We need it broken by a tabulated format that clearly states that. And I think the statement of fact at some point, like you said, if you use a 30% square footage, 30 square feet, then the capacity is a lot more than 77. Whereas the statement of fact says the classroom sizes are underserved, they're below capacity. So again,
The proposed are below capacity?
yeah, the statement of fact states that the classroom size is already underserved. So again, numbers are saying something different. I had a question about the phase 2 site investigation. Somewhere in the document it says phase 2 site investigation will have to be done. I do not know if that is included in the 90,000 that was indicated as part of the below grade, and if that's an additional cost that's not been spelled out. And the hours of operations also was not clearly stated, especially between the sessions.
I also wanted more clarification on the noise attenuation. So they say that the barrier they're installing is adequate, but they don't really explain well why. I'd like more
It's a very
information on
quiet
that.
residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
With very, yeah.
So, and especially on the roof of the first floor.
First floor.
I mean, typically, if the roof is higher than everybody else, the sound arguably isn't heard at street level. At least that's what we're always taught when they do the sound analyses. I don't know how bouncing sound works and all that. All right, anyone else?
And maybe then also how the program would address noise. So will the roofs be used at particular times to sort of diminish the impact on, on neighbors?
Okay. Okay.
Item number 2, 115BZ, 24 East 39th Street, Manhattan.
Okay. For me, it would have been helpful to understand from the floor plans, the scope of the changes on the various renovation versions. For example, how much new work is there to enlarge the rooms for extended stay? Because that wasn't provided, I printed out pictures and taped them to my window, and then I could overlay and see what the changes were. So with respect to that, I saw that the changes to increase to extended stay were fairly minimal, with just a little bit of removal of walls. So I didn't understand how there could be a cost of $4.3 million to accomplish that, or why one stop on the elevator is being removed to accomplish that, or why there are so many plumbing fixtures and doors and millwork in the bar and the lounge. That's not, they said that the 2010 renovation was great. You see pictures of the interiors, they look great. And that the only reason this isn't working as an extended stay is because the rooms are too small. So according to that, then, you don't need to upgrade the bar, you don't need to upgrade the toilets and everything else. And the 4.3 million is removing all the toilets, for example. The plans, and the plans themselves don't align with those costs. In addition to which you wouldn't have costs to the FF&E, since there's no work shown at all in the cellar and the to first floor and on the 6th floor. There's just no work shown at all in the drawings, and the second and 5th floor are the only ones that have a little bit of work being shown, like the removal of a couple of partitions and a couple of toilets. The statement of facts uses the term partial demolish to describe the scope of the work required for the residential conversion. To be clear, the exterior walls, elevator, and stairs would be retained. So that's the part, again, I don't understand. The cost estimates show the elevators and stairs being replaced, but the drawings show identical elevator and stairs. And those are being retained. So it's only interior partitions, including bathrooms, that would have to be removed. And unlike the statement of facts, add in the cost estimate, which state the stairs and elevators have to I said that already, okay, sorry. The hotel's past history is from 2014, which was the I'd like to know what the occupancy rate and the return in 2015 was, because they only showed that they had like a 10-month history to show us, but now it's a lot later. They should show us last year's history. And they claim that there was a kind of a high occupancy rate, but I went online and I tried to book.
You couldn't.
And you couldn't until
I tried
September,
to.
except for the penthouse, which was super expensive. So that doesn't really bear out their claim. Anybody else?
I too had a question of the extent of the renovations that they were proposing that they would have to do to, make additional space for larger rooms. If they've already gone through a major renovation and they're really not changing anything sort of programmatically in the building, it seems to me that there's probably a lesser scheme somewhere that just shows them opening walls to accommodate making a larger room. So I question sort of the whole renovation issue. Also, they don't really talk about the restaurant in the cellar, the Shakespeare, which is a pretty nice restaurant and seems to be going great guns. So they don't talk about the financial impact that has. Would they be proposing that they need that space, or it's not going to continue to be a restaurant? So I'd like to hear more about that. Let's see, what else do I have here? And in their as of right, they should justify having a library and recreation space in the residential. They have a large manager's office and another sort of small office. for a building that's relatively small, that's a lot of sort of amenity space that probably could be put towards residential. So I didn't understand that. Yeah, demonstrate the limited renovation options. Provide backup for the estimated $10,000 per room to renovate existing rooms. And the comps for the AOR, for the as of right and the average favorability comparison, at the most $100 off the average of $75 plus or minus. I didn't understand that. They had comps for various sizes of rooms, but it didn't seem to me that they really compared. So I don't know if Commissioner Otley Brown has something to say about that, but for me, I didn't understand that. Page 16 of their facts and findings states that the public rooms are too small for events. However, their website shows different configurations, and they seem to be able to rent these out for parties. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily a totally true statement. And just the limited sort of investigation I did online for residences, it seems that they kind of fall sometimes in the middle of what's out there in this area for residential.
For apartment hotels.
Apartment hotel, extended stay residences. So I didn't see that they were terribly under the square footage that one could get. So maybe they need to look at that a little bit further.
I have lots of financial questions to ask. The major question one of the major questions is they're saying basically that the extended stay hotel scenario is not as viable as the preferred transient. And they're basically saying that the problem is that this hotel is obsolete for an extended stay hotel, small rooms, but the financials are not necessarily indicating only that. The financials are showing that it's not just the fact that it's an extended stay hotel with small rooms, but they're also pointing to the fact that it's also a small hotel. And that's an issue that they have to include in their uniqueness because they're certainly covering it in their financials. And then they also have to address whether or not that's really unique for the area, and that's a question that hasn't been answered yet. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at the extended stay hotel with the larger floor plates, if it were simply a question of the individual room sizes that were an issue, then the larger floor plate should be close to viable, and it's not. And the reason why it's not is because probably you only have 22 rooms in that scenario, so what can you do? And also the financials are not reflecting that the larger rooms bring a larger income because the average room income for the original existing extended stay versus the extended stay with larger floor plates only differs by about $15 a night per room. So therefore, the uniqueness is not solely that. There's something else going on there. But that being said, I had questions about the site value. I think there's a possibility it could have been overvalued. The site value is based on comparable hotel sales, but it's based on comparable transient hotel sales. And they do have a discount in there for the fact that this is an extended stay and not a transient, but because the whole gist of their uniqueness argument is that extended stay is not a viable option here, I don't think a 15% discount on the transient hotel sales is getting at the value of this site. And so I think it would be helpful if they could somehow find other comps that are either extended stay hotel sales or perhaps transient hotels that are located in what are now residential districts, so that at least any kind of changes to them is sort of capped off by the fact that they're legally non-conforming. That might actually get at the value or be a better indicator of the value of the site. Let's see. I have a comment about the extended stay hotel rates. The comparables that are used don't have size in square footage, which I think is essential if you're making the case that the subject isn't feasible because the rooms are too small to compete with the other rooms. You can't then just show us any kind of comparables and not say that, okay, these are 800 square feet or 600 square feet. It's not convincing. Okay, I already commented about the pricing of the extended stay versus the extended stay larger floor plates, where the room average difference is from like $310 a night to $318 a night. And so what ends up happening is your extended stay larger floor plates actually has less total income than your regular extended stay. So that kind of shoots your argument in the foot unless you incorporate the fact that it's a small hotel into it. I think that the pricing mechanism for the extended stay is not reflecting the comparables in any way, shape, or form, so I'm not quite sure exactly what they're basing their own floor pricing schedule by, because they've got, you know, on rooms 2 to 4, they have studios at $265 a key, regardless of the size and square footage. Floors 5 and 6 are at varying rates, but I'm not sure what the pricing is based on. They have a range of $265 to $615, but it's not necessarily size or floor location, because you have one bedrooms of varying sizes on varying floors, all at the same price at $323 a key. So the average per key is $310 a night and does worse than the hotel with the larger rooms by FAR, so it doesn't support the argument that the larger rooms do better. For the same thing with the flooring schedule for the extended stay hotel rates with the larger floor plates, I'm not sure what the pricing is based on. The retail rates, the retail rents show $100 a square foot, but I'm not sure how they're valuing the basement retail space, and I'm talking about the restaurant downstairs, because I believe that's external to the hotel business itself, so if they could add a narrative talking about that. As for the residential scenarios, I think that their argument would be better if they could match the square footage to what is actually on the plans, match the total number of bathrooms to what is actually on the plans, because if you look at their pricing schematics, they're missing half bathrooms in a couple of different units, and so those units are priced almost the same as the smaller of the same amount of bedrooms. So they should properly align the pricing to reflect the size and the number of bedrooms, the size and square footage, and where the number of bedrooms is the same, the differing amount of bathrooms, and its location within the building. So you see that they are trying to do that in that, like, 2 bedrooms on the lower floors are less than 2 bedrooms on the upper floors, but it isn't consistently done. So it then makes you question whether or not this is actually a valid argument, because there are inconsistencies throughout. I can get into details. An example of that would be the as-of-right number 1, the first floor has 2 studios with different square footage and different prices. However, on the 3rd floor, there are 2 one-bedrooms that are different square footage that are the same price. And then on the 4th floor, there are 2 one-bedrooms that are exactly like the 3rd floor, where they're different sizes, but they're different prices. So you can see that there's no logic that follows straight through, and I have several other examples about that. My questions concerning the construction costs were, why do all of the scenarios need new HVAC systems and new electrical when all of that was recently redone, and there isn't going to be any major change to this hotel that would require that kind of reconstruction? Also, why does the proposed need FF&E when the existing hotel is in perfect condition? I know that there are schedules for replacement of FF&E. I think it's like every 5 or 7 years, and so I don't think that this would qualify, so they could take out that added
Well, this was a
cost.
2010 renovation.
It's a 2010?
10,
Oh, because
yeah.
it looks like virtually new
it does
when you
look
look on
virtually
the
Those might be
website.
old photographs that reflect new conditions.
True,
but I don't
it'd be
know.
great if they could address that.
But isn't that the cost of doing business when you run a hotel, that you build into your operating costs, that every 5-7 years you're going to have to replace the upholstery and the carpeting or whatever? Does that have to be figured into a cost to run these businesses? If it's all, shouldn't it be kind of a wash?
Well, no, they always do include FF&E
Okay.
as a valid expense.
Okay.
Also, the extended stay hotel has food and beverage income and expense in the hotel backup. But there isn't any room service provided at this hotel. So I'm not sure why they're taking that, even though it is almost a wash. I think it probably should just be taken out. And there is an on-site restaurant at that hotel, but that on-site restaurant already has its income and expense incorporated into the retail rents and expenses that are listed in the regular part of the analysis. So those are my questions.
Be good.
I don't have much to add, except I visited the hotel, I picked up a brochure, and they did advertise events and also a rooftop bar. And with the change of use and the change of CO, I was just curious if they would have some renovations required due to stricter ADA requirements? Because they seem...
2010?
Sorry?
2000, this is after the 2008
No, it's a change
building.
of use.
Yeah, change of
Oh,
use
to
will-
go to-
will trigger. We learned that the other day.
Right, yes.
The change of use triggers the...
So I just, because there's no cost
Right, but they-
associated with going to the proposal, and everything's fine, you just change the C of O.
Right.
So, because they have, a strange ramp down to the basement to get into an elevator, and the doors don't look that wide. I was just curious about that, if they've reviewed that.
To transient. So it would be, the question isn't just ADA, it's everything, right? But so, that's the thing that's confusing about the drawings. For example, if the elevators and stair have to be replaced because you're switching from one use group 2 to use group 5 hotel, then we'd see a different staircase installed, right? That's wider, a bigger elevator. There'd be incredible amounts of demolition to bring it up to transient, and you just wouldn't want to go there. It would be a fortune, right? So actually, we should understand that if the 2014 code, based on the change in use, requires that they now change all the circulation systems because they don't meet ADA and they don't meet whatever the sprinkler requirements are and all those things. Fire code.
Good question.
Okay. Okay.
Item number 3, 18815BZ, 100 West 72nd Street, Manhattan.
Okay, with respect to, I'm just kind of going in any order, there's an open elevator violation. I think that's probably the elevator that's servicing the PCE, so I'd like to know if yes, then how's it affecting the PCE?
Actually, I think they're installing a new elevator from the ground floor to the cellar. And there's permits posted for excavation and installing a new elevator. So I think it might be the residential elevator. Because this elevator, I believe, is just going to go from the ground floor to the cellar. And they're just starting work on it,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, because otherwise there was no way to get down there.
Yeah, well, it
Right.
would be in the residential lobby.
Yeah.
No, it's the other side, on Columbus. And they're putting an elevator in,
It's a
Okay.
separate
I believe.
And then, question about, there is fire alarm note shown on the drawings. There is no sprinklers indicated. The fire safety narrative indicates there are sprinklers, but it doesn't say where they are, and they aren't noted on the plan. There's no notation on the plan, so I don't actually understand what's going on with the sprinklers. They did just recently provide a first floor plan, I think they did it on Friday, to show the means of access and egress to the street, because before it was just the cellar plan.
And they included floor area, right, for that entry?
I don't
I don't
Did they?
think so.
I don't think they did, but they
Okay.
should
Yeah.
either make the argument for or against it, because I think it's probably a dedicated entry. It would be part of the floor area.
Okay. And then I'd like to know who the tenants are above and below. They show in section, there's a sub-cellar. Is that just a mechanical sub-cellar, or is there actually a tenant down there? The padding specs that they provided for the flooring don't show their effect on noise and vibration transmission. Those kinds of pads are actually for the person working out, so it's not such a strain on their knees. So that's actually not an acoustical separation. It has sort of the side effect of having a little bit of acoustical separation. And I got from reading that there wasn't going to be music in the space, but I'm not sure if that's true. Anybody else?
So I found this an interesting one, given that this is more like a physical therapy place
Yeah.
with a physical cultural establishment built into it. So I would like to, I've never been to one, it sounds like a good idea, but I just would like to get a sense of which is the primary one, and are people going there with doctor's notes or something, referral, and then once you go to the physical therapy, then you are moved to one of these programmed sessions that are part of the physical cultural establishment, where you have group classes and things like that. So is it all kind of part of one organized program, because it's only by appointment that one can go use this facility. So I would like to get a little bit clarity on the program part of it, and that can maybe help answer some of the questions in terms of the noise and.
No? Yeah, I mean, private trainers also, you go by appointment. So I got the impression that you can go for your physical therapist,
Right.
who then gives you a set of exercises,
Right.
and you can do those exercises over there with a trainer.
And then they have group classes, so
Yeah.
how does that work? I mean, is that also part of like, okay, we are going to deal with people with shoulder pain, these are all group those who have group shoulder pain go for group classes A.
Right.
I just would like to get a better sense of.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, that's it.
That's it. This concludes the public review session for April 25th, 2016. Mike's off.